Tom, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
So, walk me through. The president did this big interview on Meet the Press. He made a lot of news on immigration. One of the things that he talked about is stuff that's going to happen on day one, these executive orders. He said that there's a lot of things from energy, but he obviously pointed out the border. What are you guys looking to do day one that's going to make a difference?
On day one, there's three different rails, I would call it. One is secure the border. Second is start the deportation operation, and third is to find the 340,000 missing children. So look, we're gonna end catch release on day one. No one's gonna be released from the border. We're gonna continue the border wall construction. We're working with Mexico on to put the Remain in Mexico program back in. Basically re-up the previous Trump policies that were most effective. That's the Remain in Mexico program, third safe country agreements, and catch and release. On the border, we're going to day one. We're going to concentrate on those in the country illegally that are a public safety threat, convicted criminals, and we're already working on that targeting in the major cities. So we're going to prioritize public safety threats and national security threats without a gauge. Third thing is we're in the middle of creating a task force right now to find over 340,000 children that were smuggled in this country, released by the Biden administration to unvetted sponsors, not properly vetted sponsors, and find many of these children, because some of these children are going to be in forced labor. Some of these children we're going to find in sex slavery. So we got to save these children, get them with their families. We'll do the immigration consequences after, but these are the three rails we're going to start on day one.
I've never heard that number before. See, that's that many children that we're talking about. It's almost like the media has ignored it.
Of course, they've ignored it. They're still concentrating on the 2,500 family separation that happens during zero tolerance. So they want to keep beating the brush on the 2,500 people that were families that were separated because the parent was prosecuted and the child couldn't go to jail with them. That happens to U.S. families every day, thousands of times across this country. But they want a different set of rules for illegal aliens. But no one wants to talk about over 300,000 missing kids. No one wants to talk about the thousands of angel moms and dads who buried their children because their children were killed by someone that was in the country illegally. So yeah, we're going to look for these kids. President Trump wants to make that a priority because these kids, not all of them, but many are in danger, and we got to save these kids.
You know, you had this epic exchange with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when you were testifying in front of Congress, and everyone likes to talk about family separation, but I think Tom Homan, you gave the best example I've ever heard someone give when it comes to family separation, harkening back to your days as a cop, where you said, "What do you think if someone gets pulled over for?" I think the example you used was DWI. You know, we arrest the parent. What do you think happens to the kid? I mean, I don't think people fully appreciate the fact that it happens every single day in America. If somebody violates the law, that's how it works.
Yeah, it's unfortunate and it's sad, but it's part of law enforcement. I was a cop in New York. I separated families, whether it's DUI or a domestic violence call or whatever. We separate families. The child goes to CPS temporarily, and that happens thousands of times across the country. But when we tried it during the Trump administration, the whole purpose we did zero tolerance, where children were dying on the border every day. 31% of women are getting raped by the members of the cartel. So we said, look, maybe we start prosecuting them, they'll stop coming. And maybe there'll be less rapes. Maybe there'll be less children dying. And you know what? The numbers on the border did drastically decline during that time. However, it's an unfortunate part of the business, but families get separated. But again, the media wants to keep concentrating on that and ignore the fact they've lost over 300,000 children to unvetted sponsors.
You know, you mentioned the media, and the recent polls show that the American people, well into the high 50s, 57, 58% of Americans support the policies that President Trump has talked about, mass deportations that you will carry out, keeping people out of this country who are not here legally. But I thought what was really interesting in the Meet the Press interview yesterday with Kristen Welker is that President Trump said, you know what's going to happen? The second that we deport some criminal, you're going to go to the woman and try to make her a victim and parade her around. The thing that I thought was fascinating, Tom, was that he seems acutely aware of how the media is going to portray some of the people that are I don't know, I wouldn't call them victims, but are the result of separations. A criminal gets deported, a criminal gets brought to jail, and his wife is now out on her own, or his girlfriend. But I guess my point is, when it comes to these policies, in theory, I think they're wildly popular, as polls suggest. But how important are you guys? How much are you paying attention to sort of the public perception that's going to be uh, part of this in terms of the media coverage and the reaction that people will have based on how the media will portray this?
Well, look, the media is gonna they're gonna vilify us like they did the first time, and it's unfortunate because, I've been out there ever since, President Trump announced me. I haven't, waited to start my campaign of what I'm going to do. I'm out there talking to people every day and what we're going to do. We're going to be very transparent on what we do. We have to be because we can't lose the faith in the American people. We need to show the American people we have to do this, and we're going to do it in the most humane way possible. What really concerns me is that we know they're going to find the first crying child, the first crying wife, and play it out. But here's the problem. I know that President Trump talked to this interview. People say, "Well, you're going to separate American children from the illegal alien parent." Well, that's not my problem. The illegal alien, when you come to this country and you're here illegally and you choose to have a child here, and that child becomes a U.S. citizen because of birthright citizenship, you put yourself in that position. You put your family in that position. If we want to send a message, enter the country illegally, which is a crime, remain in the country illegally, get ordered by an immigration judge and don't leave, then have a U.S. citizen child, now you're off the hook. Now the final order of the court doesn't mean anything. Now you get amnesty. Now you're immune from our laws. No, because that's a message we send every illegal alien that comes to this country. First thing they'll do is have you as a citizen child, because that be their get out of jail card, their get out deportation charge. We can't have that. We got to send a message to the world. There's a right way and the wrong way to come to this country. Now, if you have a U.S. citizen child, we're not going to deport the child. It's illegal to deport a U.S. citizen, but you got to make a decision. Do you leave the child here or do you take them with you? That is your call. You put yourself in a position, and so we're not going to apologize for doing our job. But we're going to be very clear and very transparent. We can't lose the messaging on this. During the first Trump administration, we lost the messaging when it came to zero tolerance. This time we're not. We're going to show people every day that when I say we're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats first, that's exactly what we're going to do. However, if you're in the country illegally, you're not off the table. We'll eventually get to you.
See, I love how you guys are approaching this time, because I've told people, and you're the prime example of this, these 4 years out of office have allowed people like you to really think through the policy in a way that I don't think we had the opportunity to do so taking office the first time in 2016. And this understanding of the media reaction and how they'll try to portray this is brilliant, because you guys are so far ahead of the game this time. And I want to pick on two things that you said. I want to touch on birthright citizenship in a second. But the first thing you said is this. So if a person is a criminal or being deported and they have a U.S. A child that was born in the U.S. and has citizenship now under our law, how does that play out? You touched on it a second, but just walk me through. That person gets deported, and what are the choices that they would then have?
Well, the subject is going to be deported, and if he has a U.S. citizen child, if he's the parent of that child, then he's got to make a decision like you and I would. What are we going to do with the child? You can certainly take the child with him. That's probably the right thing to do. The child will still remain a U.S. citizen, but if he wants to be with the parent wants the child to be with him, he can certainly take him with him, or he can leave him here under the care of another spouse, a spouse or a relative. But we cannot prevent deportation simply because you chose, while here illegally, while already being ordered deported by a federal judge, that you have a child and all of a sudden you're immune to the court order. Because if we're going to start playing that game, you're never going to solve the border crisis. Number two, if the court order doesn't mean anything, then what the hell are we doing? Might as
Yeah.
well just shut down the immigration court, because it's a waste of time. Court orders don't mean anything. They won't be executed. Might as well take the border control off the border because there's no consequences. And that's why one of the biggest justification people this mass deportation is inhumane, is racist. No, it's not. On the end of a historic illegal immigration crisis where over 8 million people have been released into this country, and based on immigration court data, 9 out of 10 of those people, based on immigration court data over the last decade, will get an order removal because they simply don't qualify for asylum. They made a fraudulent asylum claim. So knowing millions of people have been released in this country that after they cross the border illegally, which is a crime, knowing that 9 out of 10 of those millions are going to be ordered deported by a judge. We have to execute those orders because, again, if not, we're send a message to the entire world. It's okay to cross a border illegally, even though it's a crime. It's okay to ignore a judge's order. But if you have a U.S. citizen child, or even if you don't have a U.S. citizen child, we're going to let you stay because we don't want to be the big bad government to deport you. We will give anybody in this world due process. You want to make an asylum claim? You can make that claim. You want to see a judge? We'll make that happen. But at the end of that process, if you're ordered removed, you must be removed, or due process means squat. So we got that's the way this legal system in this country is set up. We got to follow the laws enacted by Congress.
So the second part about this, you keep mentioning if you have a U.S. citizen child, right? President Trump touched on this in the interview, saying, all you have to do is basically touch U.S. soil, and you have a baby, they become a U.S. citizen. That's birthright citizenship. There are a lot of constitutional scholars that claim that that is inherent in the Constitution. He says he's going to deal with it day one. How involved are you with that process, and what is it going to look like?
Like I'm working on it, and I actually think if you look at birthright citizenship, first of all, it's a magnet for people to come to the country illegally. It's an incentive because again, a lot of pregnant women come across that border for the sole purpose of having a child here. We got birth tourism. I mean, when I was ICE director, we shut down an operation in LA where they were bringing thousands of people from China and Russia simply to come here and give birth and have a U.S. citizen child, then go home. But they wanted a foothold in the United States. They wanted access to social service programs. So, and that's illegal. And we shut down two organizations that were doing that. I actually think, look, I'm not a constitutional scholar, I'm not an attorney, but I think in that Supreme Court case, which is 125 years old, Wong versus the United States, they said a child born here was a U.S. citizen, but he was born to two aliens that were legally in the United States. The court never looked at someone who entered the country illegally, which is a crime, remains here illegally. Is that child, if it's born, actually a U.S. citizen? Because I don't believe that's so. So,
Well, can I
again,
ask you this, Tom? If you're a diplomat, I'm the ambassador from blah blah blah, and I come here and have a child, is that citizen? Is that child a citizen?
I believe so because you're in
Oh,
the
I
country
actually,
illegally.
my understanding is that if you're here diplomatically, that child isn't a citizen. I just wonder if it's not a blanket thing, then clearly there is a loophole in it.
Well, again, looking at the Supreme Court case 125 years ago, you're talking about someone that's legally here, and under the control of the United States government. I forget the terminology used, but as a guy who can read, I can certainly read what it says. I think it's up for debate. I think it's a question that needs to be settled by the Supreme Court. Let's get a final answer to that question that's never been dealt with. When someone here illegally has USC kids, that question's never been posed. So let's put it in front of the Supreme Court and see what they
Yeah.
say, because it's an unanswered question for decades. And I'm telling you, even when Barack Obama was president, Jay Johnson was the secretary. We had a family search. Jay Johnson himself approved a family operation. We go find these families that had their due process removed and order removed. So Jay Johnson said, "Let's go find these families, make sure they leave." That's ordered by the court. When we went in that operation, looking at these families, 46%, 46% of the women were already pregnant or had a U.S. citizen child since she got here. So it is a big incentive that drives illegal immigration.
Um, when with your role, you were the acting ice director in the past. You've been I mean, you've had a lot of roles. I understand this. What is it? Explain sort of how this role, as sort of, we're referring to as the border czar working out of the White House, is going to be different and give you more. What does that give you in terms of latitude to affect change?
Well, I have much more authority than I did as ICE director, and plus, talking to President Trump, we're doing things a little differently because whatever happens on the border, there needs to be one stovepipe. There needs to be exact coordination what happens at the border. So, a lot of people touch the border. DOD touches the border. DHS touches the border. HHS touches the border. DOJ touches the border. You got all these different branches. DOI touches the border. So we decided rather than have like 10 different stovepipes coming to the White House dealing with the border, all those stovepipes roll into one stovepipe called the border czar. So I can coordinate interagency efficiency, interagency communication to make sure we're all on the same page. Then when we come up with a border security plan, all the agencies are in the loop and we're all working together hand in hand. I report directly to the president, so I'll be giving the president my my policy ideas and how I think we be most effective on the border, how we be most effective in the interior enforcement operations, then the president will make sure that the cabinet heads uh, will perform as we decided the White House it should be best interest of the United States. So it's about bringing everybody together, being better coordinated during the first administration, and making decisions that are going to be carried out through every cabinet person, representative that's a part of this, that's part of the border security plan.
When I was down at the border, I asked the agents the two most important things that we needed to do. They said enforce the law and build the. I mean, enforce the law and build the wall. What are we going to do to get the wall? I mean, I was it was just unreal for me to watch all of this border wall just sit there in piles undone because they had been told the day one of Biden not to touch it. What are we going to do to restart the construction of the wall?
Well, one thing, another thing, Sean, you're right. We're sitting there, rotting, and at the same time, this administration has been working very hard to sell all that material.
What?
Yeah, pennies on the dollar. So we don't know how much of that's left. But look, I know Congress is working right now on giving us a budget through the reconciliation process, the biggest budget we ever had. President Trump wants to finish that wall. We need to finish the wall because the wall is very effective. Wherever a border barrier was placed, illegal immigration went down, illegal drug flow went down. And not only that, Sean, what people don't want to talk about, the border wall saves lives because women and children can't get over that wall. The most vulnerable can't get over that wall. So they're going to a place where there's not a wall. And what's waiting on them? The men and women of the Border Patrol will take care of their humanitarian and medical needs right off the bat. So the wall saved lives. So I'm working with representatives on the Hill, and Steve Miller's taking a big lead in this too to make sure we got the money we need quickly to secure the border and run this operation. To run the deportation operation, we need a lot of money. We need money for beds. We need money for transportation. And here's what people need to understand: everybody says, well, I did a 60 Minutes interview and she threw out some massive number, what this is going to cost or how expensive it was. It's going to be expensive, but you know what? It's in the long run, it's going to be cheaper for American taxpayers. Right now, they're spending billions of dollars on letting people in, put them in a hotel room at $500 a night, free medical care, 3 meals a day in perpetuity. So running this operation will be expensive in the beginning, but in the long run, it's going to save the taxpayers billions of dollars.
By the way, beautiful job on that 60-minute interview. And the thing that I loved about how you answered some of those questions is the rhetorical way in which you retorted, right? It's not to me just the cost, right? I mean, the dollars. Tell me the price you put on the children that get addicted to fentanyl that comes over the border. Tell me the cost of people that are raped. How much is that worth? Because I think that that's what people are missing in this conversation, and that you so ably highlight in interview after interview is the cost isn't just a dollar figure about the gift cards and the phones and the hotel rooms. It's a cost to our safety. It's a cost to the families that deal with the fentanyl, the human trafficking, the crimes against them. And that's what I think you have really started to point out. What price do we put on that?
Yeah, what price do you put on the life of Laken Riley, who struggled for 18 minutes to save her life? That young lady didn't want to die, and she struggled for every breath. What price you put? I've met hundreds of angel moms and dads, and I'll remember every terrible story how their children died. What price do you put on a young teenage, high school teenage girl who was, you know, caught in the woods and hacked up by MS-13 machete until she died of her wounds? I mean, what price do you put on all these women raped? What price do you put on a 9-year-old little girl that I talked to that was raped multiple times by the cartel? That little girl will never be the same. Everything innocent and pure was stolen from her, and her life will never be the same. What cost you put on the 19 dead aliens that I stood among in the back of a tractor trailer that baked to death in a steel box? You're right. What price you put on national security? This administration caused such a horrific crises on the border that overwhelmed the border patrol. We're up to 70% of border tracers were pulled off the line to deal with the humanitarian crisis. That's when a fentanyl killed 250,000 Americans. What price you put on that? What price you put on the 600% increase in sex trafficking? What price you put on a record number of people from the terrorist watch list entering this country? National security should have no price tag. You would think that Republicans, Democrats, Independents, it should be a nonpartisan issue to secure the border. There's no downside in securing the border. Securing the border saves lives of migrants and U.S. citizens.
Couldn't say it better myself. You mentioned that the cartels. When I was visiting the border, it was eye opening. the degree to which they were telling me how the cartels basically control the border. And they told me a story that I thought was interesting. The guy said, "Hey, do you ever drive by like a check cashing place and you notice that nobody's in there or whatever?" And I was like, I can't say I pay that much attention to it. And he said, "Start to, because these children and people that they're trafficking, they'll bring them to a city, pick, Chicago, New York, whatever, and then they'll basically say, okay, you work in our restaurant, you live in our places, you cash your checks at our place." And they've got an entire economy that's being run on people that are trafficked illegally into the country. How important is it to address the cartels?
Well, the President Trump has made it clear that the cartels are going to be a designated terrorist organization. That way we can attack them all over the world. And look, it's going to take the United States to take the cartels out. And, President agrees with me that criminal cartels in Mexico have killed more Americans than every terrorist organization in the world combined. So there certainly should be a terrorist organization. I mean, they're killing thousands of journalists and politicians and judges in Mexico. They act like a terrorist organization. They've killed more Americans than any terrorist organization. So when President Trump designates that, U.S. can play a major role in abolishing these cartels, wiping them off the face of the earth. And it's going to take the U.S. to do it. Mexico has failed to do it for 3 decades. Part of the problem is much of Mexico is corrupt. I'm going to say it. I mean, I've worked with Mexico for decades, and many of the police, many of the military, many of the government are corrupt. Now, I'm not saying everybody. I'm sure there's soldiers and police officers and politicians in Mexico want to do the right thing, but the cartels are running the country of Mexico. Everybody agrees to that. Cartels they have operational control of the southern border. They decide who comes in, when comes in, how it comes in. Not the men and women of the Border Patrol. The men and women of the Border Patrol are trying to keep their heads above water. But even chief patrol agents have told me that they've lost operational control of the border. One chief patrol agent even used the term broken arrow. He can't possibly contain what's coming at him. So, yes, it's going to take the U.S. to do it. We're going
Should we
with
use
our
our
special
military?
operations and our intelligence. Absolutely, if that's what's needed. I mean, we use military against ISIS. Look what President Trump did to the caliphate. We need to do the same thing to the cartels. And I'm hoping Mexico comes to the table and say, look, we need to get rid of these cartels once and for all. I need U.S. help. And I think it's going to require our special operations to take them out.
So later this week, you're meeting with New York Mayor Eric Adams, who has actually signaled a willingness to want to meet with you after declaring his city a sanctuary city a few years ago. Now I think has seen the light. So tell me about what you want to like. How do you work with a guy like Mayor Adams? And on the flip side, you've got the exact opposite, where the Los Angeles City Council adopted a sanctuary city ordinance. It's unbelievable how opposite they're going. So walk me through how you're going to handle a guy like a Democrat like Mayor Adams, and then how you're going to deal with the Los Angeles City Council that basically is snubbing their nose and saying we're doubling down on stupid here.
Well, first of all, American people need to understand President Trump and myself, we've been very clear. We're going to concentrate on public safety threats and national security threats out of the gate. We have to. We have to prioritize them because they pose the biggest danger to this country. It's hard for me to fathom that any elected mayor or governor, there's many of them now, that want to prevent ICE from doing that job. I can't believe there's an elected mayor or elected governor that doesn't want public safety threats removed from their communities. I mean, that's your number one responsibility to their constituency, is to protect those communities. So I can't believe they don't want to go shoulder to shoulder with us on this. But if they don't want to help, get the hell out of the way. We're going to do it. And here's the message I said this morning on a show I did this morning. I want to make this clear. It's something President Trump talked about, but I want to explain it more in detail. If you let me into jail to talk to the illegal alien you were arrested for a crime and you locked him in a jail cell for apparent reason he's a public safety threat, let me have access to that guy. When you're done with him, give us access in the jail. Let us take custody and safety and security of the county jail where we know he doesn't have weapons. It's safe for everybody. But when you knowingly release that person back into the community, which most of these sanctuaries do, and New York's still doing it, that forces me to go to the neighborhood to find him. That puts the officers at greater risk. That puts the alien at greater risk. That puts the community at greater risk. I got to send a whole team into the community to find that guy. And we're going to find him. And when we find him, we're probably going to find others that aren't a priority. But guess what? I'm not going to instruct immigration officers to turn a blind eye to someone standing in front of us in the country illegally. So even though they're non-priority, they're illegal aliens, they're going too. So these mayors and governors need to understand you are causing the result of which you don't want, which is more agents in your neighborhood and more priority and non-priority aliens being arrested. Well, that means in jail the rest of the bad guy. If you let me in the jail, arrest the bad guy, is safe and is secure. And it's safe for everybody. It's safe for the community, safe for my officers, it's safe for the alien. But you release the public safety threat back in the community, it puts the community at risk. It puts the alien at risk. It puts my officers at risk. And now I got to send a whole team to the community, look for that guy. And when we find him, based on my 3 decades, we're going to find others that aren't a priority. But since they're in the country illegally, they're going to be arrested too, because we're going to force the law. So by locking me out of your jail, by being a sanctuary city, not letting your law enforcement work with us, you are going to get the result that you don't want. More agents in your community, more aliens arrested, specifically non-priority aliens. You forced me in that position. You want to play that game? I'll play that game, but you'll get a lot worse result from what you want. Give us access to jail. Give us access to a taxpayer-funded jail. Arrest the bad guy right there. And Mayor Adams reached out to me. He wants to work with me. We're going to talk about how we make that happen. I'm certainly hoping his officers will help during the public safety operation, arrest the bad guys who are creating crimes in their cities, make the cities safer. I'm not going to ask his officers to be immigration officers. We're going to ask for their support on these operations because they're very dangerous. So I will meet him on Thursday. I'm hoping when I leave that office, we have some sort of agreement how he can help us. I would certainly like access to the Rikers Island jail. We used to have a dozen agents in Rikers Island. We arrest hundreds of illegal aliens convicted of crimes out of there every week. We're not allowed in Rikers Island jail right now. Let me in that jail and take the bad guys. When you're done with them, give me the bad guys. And not only will I remove him from the community, I'll remove him from the country so he can't reoffend in New York City.
I was chuckling there because I'm thinking to myself, if I'm a bad dude and I'm locked up in jail and I see Tom Homan throw in, I know I'm going to be in big trouble. Tom, the last thing I want to ask you about from this interview yesterday with President Trump did on NBC, he brought up the dreamers, and this is what he said. He said the dreamers are going to come later, and we have to do something about dreamers because these are people who have been brought here at a very young age, and they don't even speak the language of their country. I'm going to work with Democrats on a plan. In many cases, they become successful. We're going to have to do something. And then when Kristen Welker followed up, do you want them to be able to stay? He answered, I do.
The dreamers, we're talking many years ago, they were brought into this country, many years ago. Some of them are no longer young people. And in many cases, they become successful. They have great jobs. In some cases, they have small businesses. Some cases, they might have large businesses. And we're going to have to do something with them. And
you want them to be able to stay. That's what you're saying.
I do.
Okay.
I want to be able to work something out.
Walk me through what you think we need to do with this group of folks.
Well, let's remember during President Trump's first presidency, he gave the Congress a DACA plan, and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer shut it down because part of the plan was give Trump more money for a border wall. A border wall that was proven effective, a border wall that saves lives. So President Trump would propose another immigration plan to take care of DACA. So I'm with the president on this. What happens on the Hill has to be a negotiation. We need money to do this operation. We need money to go out to criminal aliens. DACA recipients, I will say this, nothing should fix DACA until Democrats come to the table, agree to secure the border, agree to remove public safety threats in this country, agree to give us the funds we need. And once the Democrats agree, this is a huge national security issue, a huge public safety issue, and fund it appropriately, DACA should be in the wings. But once they come to the table and we fix these other issues, I support President Trump. Let's take care of DACA recipients. And we got enough bad guys we can go arrest. And we can concentrate on them folks.
So can I make a suggestion?
Negotiation.
I don't understand. I mean, here's the thing. The president was clear that when you come into this country illegally, that you are punishing the people who are doing it legally, who are waiting in line, sometimes well over a decade to get in here. Why not basically make a deal with the Democrats to say, we'll let them stay. They get a work visa, whatever you guys call it, a green card or a permanent resident, but they don't get citizenship so that they can't vote. You can't reward bad behavior. In other words, to me, I guess I don't understand why that's not something that's being considered, where you basically say, fine, I get it. No other country, even though you're here illegally, we're going to give you permanent residency, but not citizenship.
Well, that's perfect vision, Sean, because that's one of the options being talked about right now. So that is one of the options on the table that we're working on. So either you got a great source or you got a great vision, but that is something we're looking at.
Maybe both.
Absolutely.
I mean, don't you think that, like, how do you, like, to me, that's the best of both worlds. Hey, you don't get to leave. You don't have to leave. but you can't enjoy the full citizenship because you broke the law to come here.
That's one of the options on the table. I think it's absolutely doable. I think it should be one of the options if we consider. And I'm with you. This country's showing over and over again for decades that we reward illegal behavior. But every time they put that, why do you think they brought millions of people to this country? They know it's going to be hard to remove them all. They're hoping for the next Democratic administration creates an amnesty program. They all become,
Citizens.
illegally here. They all become U.S. citizens. They all get to vote. That's the whole reason they unsecure the border. They see a future political benefit on future Democratic voters. But remember, they don't have to get there. They also overturned the Trump census, which is going to result in more seats in the House for the Dems because most of these people are becoming sanctuary cities. They see a future political benefit in letting these people in.
That is, again, another reminder to everyone, the census counts bodies, not citizens. So if you're in this country illegally, it benefits that area. And that is something that I don't think many Americans fully appreciate, and the media doesn't want to tell you. The census counts bodies, whether you're here legally or not citizens. And they know exactly what they're doing on the left.
Absolutely. This isn't mismanagement. This isn't incompetence. This is by design.
Exactly. Tom Homan, I can't think of a better person to be running this than you. I appreciate you coming back into service. I know you're like that scene in The Godfather where they say, I tried to get out, but they keep pulling me back in. Your dedication to this country is unmatched and unparalleled. Thank you for your service and for agreeing to come back and take this task. I know Mrs. Homan may not be happy about it, but many of us who support a strong border and public safety are appreciative of your public service. And so thank you.
Actually, Mrs. Homan is one that told me I need to come back. This is the second time I came. I'm retiring for Trump. I said, well, should I do it? I make a lot more money now than I do as a government employee. She goes, well, you need to go back when we get divorced. I said, what's that about? She goes, you've been complaining about this border for 4 years. The president wants you to come back and fix it, and you're even thinking about it. So I'm doing it. I love my country. My wife loves the country. So she's on board with this. And I can't wait to get started. January 21st. Matter of fact, I'm in Chicago today. I'm not waiting to get started. I'm already meeting with community leaders, how this affected them, how we can help them. So January 21st, game on.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I think Mrs. Homan appreciate her support as well. But you know what? Chicago needs you as well. Thanks, Tom Homan. I really appreciate all the time you've given us.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
You bet.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.